Welcome to all C3RF members and friends across Canada, and indeed around the world, and to a special in-hot interview session. Recall that in-hot is a fighter pilot term that signifies that weapons are on board, armed, and the pilot is cleared for his target run. Today's target is nothing less than the ongoing existence of our Western liberal democracy and way of life. A very able wingman, or should I say woman, I don't want to misgender anybody, on today's mission is none other than Barbara Kay. Barbara has gained a well-deserved reputation as one of Canada's most iconic authors and columnists, and is regularly featured on multiple national publications, including the National Post and the Epoch Times. Never afraid to apply her piercing common sense to issues of the day, she often finds herself on the opposing side of the diversity, inclusion, and equity narrative. This causes her adherents of such ideologies to clutch at their pearls. One such case that saw us both on the wrong side of this narrative was way back in 2017 over the introduction and progression of motion M103. Recall that this motion asserted that Canada and her citizens were bad. They were systemically racist and hard-over religious bigots, especially when it came to Islamophobia. My first question for you, Barbara, is this. Did you see M103 as an inflection point for Canada where identity politics became an existential threat to a unified and cohesive Canada? Over to you, Barbara, and a real pleasure to have you on board.
Thanks for having me on your show, Russ. It's great to finally meet you in person. I've long been an admirer of the work you've done, and in fact, you first came to my attention with your response to M103. To answer your question, yes, I did see that as a big inflection point in terms of special interest group, in this case, Islamists, pushing an agenda that would have given them priority as an interest group to claim special victim rights. The motion itself was worded so in such a way as to fool people who didn't see the underlying potential for damage to free speech rights. And the motion I found very, very ominous. But you were the guy that picked up the ball and ran with it, and you didn't just, hold your head and say, "Oh, this is terrible," like the rest of us. You said, "I'm going to do something about this," and you started a grassroots movement that truly deserves the term grassroots, because from nothing, you came out of nowhere and you started organizing. You were organized. You had a mission, you had strategies, you had tactics, like, your military, your military background really came into play on fighting this, as you saw it, an enemy. And it was an enemy because the enemy is the impulse to impose a blasphemy law in Canada, as had already been imposed in other parts of the free world. And this phrase, this word, this made-up word, Islamophobia, it was clear as day to anybody that was actually reading what they were saying, was to shut down criticism of Islam. It was nothing to do with hatred of Muslims. It was not, it was not a parallel to the word anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism doesn't mean hatred of Judaism, or you're not allowed to criticize Judaism. It means hatred of Jews. So if they had meant hatred of Muslims only, I would have said, yes, we definitely, that's nothing wrong with a resolution like that. But it was crafted very cunningly to disguise the fact that what they really wanted was to shut down criticism of Islam. And that would have been an existential moment in Canadian history in terms of our ability to have a forum in which people can criticize ideologies, religions, whatever they want, civilly, respectfully of people. It's not about individuals, it's about ideas. And if you can't discuss ideas, in a free society, and if one idea cannot be criticized, but the others can. Sorry, that's, so just to say, long-winded, but just to say, I so appreciated what you did. And in my opinion, your your organization that you started was, I think, the prime element in the fact that that resolution never materialized in what they wanted, the day of against Islamophobia and blah blah. They wanted legislation. They started
Yes.
with a resolution. They wanted, and the fact that it never moved into legislation, I credit you with that.
Yes. Well, thanks very much for that, Barbara. I really appreciate that. I at the time I was just sitting back enjoying retirement. I was just winding down an engineering and flight test pilot career, and I was looking forward to enjoying time with my grandkids, my 5 grandgirls, and then all of a sudden this motion came up out of nowhere, and I looked at it and I just couldn't believe that it was going to go forward. And what really got me was the fact that this was obviously a direct attack on free speech. But what really got me was the fact that our representatives in the House of Commons were all like clapping seals. They were,
Mhm,
let's be all compassionate. Let's show our virtue. Let's swallow this thing 100%, even though the motion itself was chock full of untruths.
mhm,
So that right there, I really saw a threat to to basically our way of life and our ability to speak freely and criticize any ideology, any religion that we choose as free Canadians. Uh, it did. I was surprised. Like I was just throwing a Hail Mary. All I was doing was I threw a Hail Mary and I started writing some critiques of the emotion itself and what was I thought was really behind it. And to my surprise, it caught on. We started a petition, and we were looking at the petition numbers, and we had 10, 20. But then all of a sudden, something kicked in, and I'm not quite sure what it was, but we garnered a lot of attention, and the petition just went to the roof. And I was again surprised when Member of Parliament Trost he reported on his Facebook page that in the 2 days prior to the vote that they had to approve motion M103, the House of Commons received something in the order of close to 900,000 emails, uh, communications saying, "Hey, we don't like this." And yeah, that told me that we were truly in movement territory. I don't really take any credit for a movement, but because I think movements are already out there. They're just waiting. They're just percolating in the background. They're just waiting for something to click before they all of a sudden they hit high gear, and you end up with something like Freedom Convoy 2022
mhm.
back in two Februarys ago. So yeah, I thank you very much for that recognition. But I think it was the good people of Canada that really kicked into gear. And along those lines, I'm sensing that things are ready to kick into high gear again. And I'm looking at this this latest issue with Danielle Smith in Alberta.
Mhm.
And we're talking about things you cannot criticize. One thing you cannot criticize is transgenderism. And she's come up with a couple of common sense rules. Hey, school kids are, they're not old enough to drive or vote, so they're not old enough to give themselves bottom surgery to do a
Mhm.
trans operation. What do you think of? I see this is kind of about ready to kick off because I'm seeing polls that indicate that the vast majority of Canadians are on Danielle's side,
Oh,
but the
yes.
Liberal Party of Canada and the NDP party are saying, they're going to go to war over this. And I'm thinking they're going to die on this hill. What do you think about this situation?
Well, I'm naturally very pleased that she did that, and I think it took courage. I think it was a very her message was more than tactful. I mean, it was all about how much oh yes, we love you, but it was her tone was kind of like a parent, saying to a child, we love you so much that we're not going to give you the keys to the car after you've been, at a party with, having drunk 10 beers. I mean, what she's really saying is, look, these decisions that allow children to make, allowing children to make decisions about their future when they're 10, 11, 12, 13 years old,
Mm.
and life-altering decisions, body-altering, possible infertility, all these things. She's really just saying what 90% of Canadians believe, that kids are too young and they go through too many different phases in their journey to adulthood to make such life-altering decisions in what is likely to be a phase. So
Yeah.
I think what she did was terrific. Immediately, the blowback on Twitter was almost farcical in its, oh my God, first they came for the transgender. Like they always go right away for the Anne Frank and the Holocaust. That's, they
Yeah.
don't even pass go. They just, right for the jugular, get out the pink triangles, wear them, on your clothes. Like the Victim Olympics has produced a kind of format that, everybody can glom onto the minute that they don't get exactly what they want and as much as
Mm.
they want. These activists are shameless. So I hope she understands that um, what you see on Twitter with the activists and Instagram and all of that does not represent what most Canadians believe. She's what she's doing is saying parents know what is in the best interest of their children more than ideologues know. And parents have rights in the education of their children. And we're giving parents, we are returning those rights because that was always the idea of what public school was about. They were serving families, they were serving children, they were serving parents. It was not up to them to decide the values that parents should be teaching their children. And now, parents, according to them, are kind of the enemy of the people,
Yes.
not
Parents have
knowing not
become.
knowing what that their children have declared themselves to be the opposite sex at school, and they're keeping that a secret. I'm sorry, that's just uh, so wrong. And the other point I'd like to make is that nothing she said was in any way radical in 2024, because over the past 5 years, we have seen in Europe and in Scandinavia, government after government reviewing um, the protocols and the assumptions and the outcomes, and all these studies have now been done on a mass scale, and one after another they're saying this is experimental. We're not seeing data that shows us that this actually does make children happier. We're not, the suicide, all this stuff has been. So now all these socialist countries that Canadian liberal Canadians, progressive Canadians have always revered, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland. I mean, they're the ones that are leading the way to a more moderate, to more restrained, to more circumspection, and
Mhm.
saying, whoa, we have to put the brakes on this. We've gone too far. So all she's doing is lining up with uh, what is now considered normative thinking and practice
Yeah.
amongst advanced nations.
Yeah. And I think she might be in that position now where she becomes that catalyst that is responsible for kickstarting a
I hope
grassroots
so.
movement. You mentioned Sweden. It's odd how Sweden only comes up in these discussions when it fits one side of the argument. I know I've seen studies coming out of Sweden, like you say, that have indicated that if children are allowed to just leave them alone, go their own way, grow up normally, uh, at the end of the day, when they do become adults, in excess of 80% will
Mhm.
find who are confused. The confused children will find that they will find their way back to their original born
Yeah, and
sex.
most of those kids are gay. So
Yeah.
we know that. And so in a way, the whole trans movement is I think arguably an anti-gay movement, because they're
Yeah.
actually assuming that gender fluid looking children um, who may be exhibiting signs of future gayness
Mm.
are no, you're not gay, you're actually trans. You're actually deflecting them from what they're what is good for them and what is in their own interests. And
Yes.
you're telling them that they actually need to change their gender rather than to wait and see, which was always the rational and enlightened um, idea before the activists got into.
Yeah. Well, put it in that way, I guess you could say that the trans movement is kind of like the snake that's eating the LGBT tail type thing.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
destroying itself. Now, talking about catalysts, there's another interesting or event or thing happening out in our popular culture today, and that is one Dr. Jordan Peterson and his ongoing battle with his own College of Psychologists in Ontario, who have instructed him and have been reaffirmed by court, as a matter of fact, judicial review, that he needs to go to a re-education camp so that he can learn how to talk on social media. So we've got the situation where we can't talk ill about trans things, and now we find a world-renowned political psychologist can't talk about political things on the internet. What's happening with this situation? Are we talking about yet another movement in the making here?
Well, maybe we are. Jordan Peterson is, of course, a unique individual in so many respects, and I think they were unbelievably stupid to take on, to use him as an example, because they should have known, anybody could see this is not a guy who buckles, to authority, when it goes against his principles. Also, he's independently wealthy. He
Yes.
he can afford to go to court. He can afford to do whatever he wants, and he's made this point himself many times. So, whereas a lot of academics in his position or psychologists would, they have a mortgage to pay, and they're not going to stick their heads over the parapet. He is able to do it, willing to do it, and does it extremely effectively. Some might say in a kind of fulsome way, but anybody also could have predicted that he's the kind of guy that would say, "Oh, you want me to go to your re-education classes? Yeah, I'll go, and I'm going to film it, and I'm going to have something to say about it after." I mean, they're going to be hoist by their own petard, because he's going to reveal what goes on in these re-education, these Maoist re-education classes. And yes,
Yes.
I think he could be the leading edge on a retreat from the insanity, if he
Yes.
does it right, and the exposure of what the of the really Marxist uh, tendencies, not tendencies, actual, they are Marxist classes,
Yeah.
uh, will
We
become, will they will make a mockery. And one thing about ideologues is they can't stand being laughed at. Like,
yes.
they really hate. That's why all the comedians, in unfree societies are the first, to go. Not allowed to mock the leader. Um, so I think he will do for DEI what needs to be done in terms of mockery and derision. So let's hope
Oh
he
yeah.
does that. Yeah.
I can see that happening, and but it is an uphill battle because I mentioned up front that I was very disappointed in our own politicians clapping like seals when it comes to these virtuous these virtuous initiatives, that label Canadians as bad and Islamophobic and all and misconstrue our history and our traditions and belittle them. But
And
we
and
have such
let's not forget they all clapped like seals for Leah Gazen's motion to declare the Indian residential schools a genocide.
yes.
That was also a shameless, um, you know,
Okay.
pandering to this, again, a kind of activism that makes out settler colonialism to be the greatest evil in the world. And uh,
Well, they've gone even beyond that now, Barbara. They're actually talking seriously about criminalizing speech that is denialist
That's right.
when it comes to the mass.
Even using the word denialism, which is such a false allegation because nobody's denying that the schools existed. The only
Yeah.
thing they're denying is that that there's any proof
Mhm.
that murders went on and that there's mass graves. And that's not denialism. That happens to be true. Nobody has produced any evidence for a single missing child, Indigenous child, or a single grave that's in a place where it shouldn't be.
No.
So,
And then the logic is
or an
also,
illicit death. There's no evidence for any of that. So this word denialism is meant to conjure up the Holocaust again. And
yeah,
it's meant to, and the word genocide that they keep pitching and they got from our government and our prime minister who said, oh yes, not only is it a genocide, it's an ongoing genocide.
yeah,
Um, so they got what they wanted. So now they've elevated their victimhood to Holocaust standard. And it's totally trivialized the word genocide, which has a very specific meaning uh, that the residential schools don't even come close to. It's on another planet. So
yeah.
that too is, you know, when you say clapping like seals, this government will clap like seals for any, you know, group that is classified under, you know, oppressed. Um, they will go out, our prime minister will go out and bend the knee during COVID lockdown for BLM protests as if like, you know, you can't get
Oh, yeah.
COVID in a BLM protest. You can only get it like if you're trying to go to church. Like you can get COVID in a church parking lot in your car, but you can't get COVID if you join a protest of 5,000 people in the street, you know, all yelling and screaming. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, our government is has not has not
Not
shown
been
themselves
helpful.
to be, you know, paragons of inspiration for a unified country, let's say.
No, I don't think so. And then you talk about things like actually coming out and legislating things like my personal opinion, Bill C-16, gender ideology, which has kind of dumped us into this situation with classrooms and students and parents. Bill C4, the conversion therapy bill, which doesn't, which criminalizes parents talking to their kids about things like confused sexuality. You know, it just goes on and on. Where we're actually fighting our own political representatives and their legislation in our House of Commons that is supposed to represent our interests. So this is
Mhm.
truly an uphill battle.
Yeah, I mean, I often feel that I feel very much, I think, like other people feel that we have for quite a long time been in a situation where our government, we don't see leadership. We're not seeing what you would call true leadership in this government. They are
Mhm.
followers. They are followers. Well, our PM sets the tone. He is a follower of trends, um, ideological trends. Uh, he's not innovative. He's not, and he's a divider, not a unifier. So I feel personally kind of rudderless politically in my own country and
Mhm.
very nervous about uh, what's going to happen. You know, we have a prime minister who doesn't care if our military degrades itself into a toothless, you know, lion. All he cares about is
Well,
that, you know, trans men should have pregnancy uniforms, you know, uniforms that would accommodate their pregnancies. Like it's all very DEI with him, including our military, and it totally lost its purpose, its sense of purpose. I think it's a very demoralized military, and that's a bad sign in a country. I think it's a very bad sign when your military is having difficulty recruiting.
yes, very much difficulty. I quite aware of. I've seen the situation develop over the years, and this is really incredible what's happening now. There's some 35,000 personnel short. They're unable to recruit. People are leaving in droves. Many reasons, but just think that the things the government is doing to its soldiers is just sticking in their craw. Like soldiers do not want to go into a washroom on a military base and encounter a tampon dispensing machine. It's an insult.
I really think it's so insulting to soldiers to say to them, this is our objective, is to make sure that we accommodate, you know, people of all genders, and to make that a sort of a primary preoccupation
Mhm.
when we don't have, I don't know, how many naval ships do we have that are actually in working order?
I
Uh,
don't know if we have one. I really
I
don't.
honestly, um, it's like it's like he thinks we're never ever going into battle again. And this is a very dangerous world we're living in. We have an unprotected, virtually unprotected North, and we have
Good point.
an empire, or a country that wants to be an empire again, um,
Hmm.
very close to that North, with
Yeah.
its eye on that North. So I sometimes wonder if they ever, if he and his cabinet ever have a discussion about this. Uh,
I wonder. That's a good question. I can't understand how they couldn't have a discussion about it. I mean, his military advisors, his chief of defense staff, should be advising him on this every day. I mean, when you look at diversity in the military as the prime objective, which it certainly seems to be, um, displacing the unity of a common mission in defeating an enemy. When I went through the military, I had 29 years in the military. I was always kind of frontline sort of guy. Always wanted to fly the fighters, be in the front of the pack and type thing. And our mission was never in question. It was close with the enemy and kill. That's the way we were trained. But this now, they're being trained to fly rainbow flags and virtue signal. Uh, Truly, I can see where the guys that are left and women in the military who are hard edged, mission orientated are leaving because this is not the mission that they want to fight for. Really.
yeah, well, I think guys like you are exactly who the military should be looking to recruit. But I know it sounds awful to say it
They would
nowadays.
have to send me to re-education camp first, Barbara.
No, no, but this was used to be considered a manly thing to do, to go into the military. And listen, for the past 25 years, they've had a mission to get as many women into the military as possible. By hook or by crook, they've spent a fortune
Yeah,
on it.
yeah.
They have not made their objective. They have not met their objectives there.
No,
I mean, there are brave women in combat. I'm not saying that women are incapable of combat. I'm
yep,
just saying that 90% of people that actually want to be in combat are men.
yeah.
And that's who you should be really concentrating on. I'm not saying women shouldn't be encouraged to go into the military. There's a million different occupations besides
Yeah.
combat in the military. But they are very, very intent on, equalizing the gender spectrum. And that's one place where it can't be done, or it
No,
shouldn't be.
it's
That shouldn't be the
un-
objective.
unfortunately what you say is true. It's they've bent over backwards to make the numbers work. Reduce standards, done this, done that, reorganize, refocus on things like diversity. It's all part and parcel of it. But at the end of the day, it's over the years, over the decades, they've never been able to recruit enough numbers of women
Mhm.
to make them anything less than a token within the force itself. And if you go way back to the late 1970s, I remember this the Swinter trials. They were the trials that the military conducted to see if women could go into combat roles. And at the end of the day, the Swinter trials concluded was inconclusive because they just didn't have enough women that they could put in the ranks to study, to trial. And what happened was the men amongst the women who were put in this position, um, basically, the idea of tokenism came to the fore. The trials are inconclusive because of tokenism. The men aren't taking them seriously. They think they're just there for political purposes. Blah blah blah. And the military never got to a point where it could get enough field enough women in the military to go beyond that tokenism level. So we're spinning wheels on this whole issue and
Yeah.
degrading
I
our
mean,
standards
listen,
as
the
we go.
US has had this debate for a long time.
Yeah.
Partly because of the what's it called? That it failed, that bid to get the equality. I'm sorry, I can't remember the initials of it. Anyways, it failed because um, all men in the United States have to register for the draft
Yes.
at the age of 18. I mean, there
Hmm.
is no draft, but they have to register anyways in case they have to impose a draft in the case
Yeah.
of an emergency. But women do not have to register, and that's why that equality ERA, was it the ERA?
Oh, the Equal Rights Amendment, ERA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. That's
And
right.
that was the sticking point because women did not want to have to register for the draft. So it's kind of at an impasse. Women can go into the military if they want, but if there is a draft, they won't be forced to go, whereas men will be. And there you go. That's
Yeah, that's right on the surface of it. It's not really all that fair and equal. But you mentioned, I want to pick up on one strand that you laid down there. You mentioned the fact that our politicians are, kind of whimsical creatures. They come and they go. They put their finger up in the air to see which way the wind is blowing. But but really, when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and equity, they're hard over. They look like they're going to plant their flag on this trans field and fight Danielle Smith. And what I want to do is I want to share screen here and go to one of your articles, fairly recent, 23 January, I think. Can you see that, Barb?
yes.
Okay. And it's your article from 23 Jan. Leninism is alive and well among the West's multitude of useful idiots. And the other important thing you raised here, I want to go down a bit, is the fact that, oh, my highlight is gone, but you mentioned the fact that, here it is here. A Harvard Harris poll has shown that 95% of Americans over 65 support Israel, but among the people 18 to 24, nearly half support Hamas. So this whole idea of Leninism, cultural Marxism, could this be a motivating factor that our politicians are rallying around and they are not prepared to give up on?
Well, I
What is
think
this?
the reason that these young people believe that is because that's what they were taught in school, and it's been taught in school for the last couple of decades. I
Yeah.
think our prime minister was indoctrinated with these themes and the ideology that allows you to consider violence and terror an admissible strategy if you're fighting for the right thing. So
Uh,
what you see amongst young people today is saying, well, uh, the October 7th pogrom, uh, yes, it was violent. It was, all those deaths, yes, but it was a form of resistance, and it was a resistance to settler colonialism. Like they describe Israel as a colonialist project, which that's a whole other, if
yeah.
going back to your homeland is uh, colonialist, then I don't know what you would say about the indigenous people everywhere. Uh,
Mm,
anyways, that's another discussion.
yeah.
But in their mind, Hamas is fighting a righteous cause of resistance. The fact that Hamas is a terror group that is dedicated to the eradication, not just of Israel, but of the Jews altogether, doesn't enter into their thinking because they have put the Palestinians, they consider the Palestinians in the category of oppressed people. That's it. When you're in that category, you can do whatever you do is admissible,
Yes.
because you are fighting against oppressors. It's very simplistic, but that's part and parcel of their mentality. They have lost the ability to distinguish between protest and terror. They don't even understand that there is a bright line between resistance and terrorism.
Hmm.
They don't understand it, and I call it Leninism because Lenin was the first ideologue who believed in using terror not against other people, as other empires have used terror against other people, but he believed in using it within his own people as a
Yes.
means to achieve the objectives of Marxism, because this is a utopian ideology. When you believe that utopia is possible, that you can achieve a perfect society, you also believe that it's admissible, it's permissible to eradicate those who stand in the way of this perfection. After all, if perfection is achievable, why wouldn't you justify getting rid of the people who want to stand in its way? This is a progressive mentality.
Yeah.
Conservatives know that there's no such thing as utopia. All you can do is make society better. You can't make it perfect. It'll never be perfect.
Yeah.
But for those who do believe in perfection, and by the way, Islamism is very much in the same way as Marxism believes um, in a godless utopia. Islamism also believes in utopia, and that is
Mhm.
the day when Islam will rule over the whole world.
Yeah.
That will be their idea of utopia. So you got to look out for utopian thinking people, because these are very dangerous people, because they don't see any limit to the atrocities. Jordan Peterson once said, and it stuck in my head. I think it was so true. He said, if you ask somebody who's conservative, what is uh, what is the dangerous extreme of conservatism? What would be the danger you'd want to watch out for? And the conservative would say, well, it would end in Auschwitz, right? But if you ask a liberal or a progressive, what extreme do you fear uh, on the left? They can't think of any,
Yeah.
because
Mm.
they so far have not condemned anything on the left, as long as the objective was achieving this alleged, utopia. And that's
Mm.
why these young people, and I think to a certain extent, for example, when Justin Trudeau said that the anger that the Indigenous people felt about the residential schools, um, and then putting it together with the burning down or vandalizing of all these
Okay.
churches. And he
Okay.
didn't say that nothing excuses burning of churches, no
No.
amount of anger. He said the opposite. He says, well, there's a lot of anger there and a lot of hurt, and it's understandable.
Yes.
Once you've opened the door to violence as a kind of way of healing or dealing with your anger, you're really saying there are no bounds. There are no boundaries, and uh, there's no such thing as a transgression that is so serious that we have to. Instead, they're dumbing down genocide when they talk about what was done to them,
Yeah.
and they're erasing the word genocide as it applies to what really happened. October 7th was a proto-genocide, and they're calling it an act of resistance. We're in a very topsy-turvy world when words are manipulated. When you manipulate words, you manipulate the way people think. And this is how young people think. They don't see the boundaries. I find that very scary.
Yeah. And then I think what we're talking about, we can start to see why the attacks on free speech are coming so hot and heavy. Because if you take away free speech, you take away that ability to challenge words that are put out there to manipulate. Your analogy of victim, oppressor, is, I think, very apt in Canada today. And I think if you're on the right side of the revolution, you can be blessed. If you're on the wrong side, you can have the Emergencies Act declared against you.
Yes.
Burning churches are understandable. Black Lives Matters, understandable. Discrimination against certain races, maybe they be white, is understandable. If you're on the right side of the revolution, it's all green light. And I think that's kind of the situation we find ourselves in Canada today. But what to say?
Yeah.
Well, I think you've certainly given our C3RF audience a lot to chew on there, Barbara. I really thank you for your insights. Always very, very deep. But as I said up front, a lot of common sense. I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of our C3RF membership for your our little in hot session today, and wish you a good weekend.
Thanks very much for having me, Russ. It was a real pleasure to meet you in person. By the way, I have 5 granddaughters too, so we have a lot in common, including
We've got one more on the way, and it looks like it's a boy, so it's going to be
Oh, wow.
it's going to be cat amongst the pigeons.
Okay. They're going to spoil him rotten.
Okay. Well, until next time, Barb, thanks again.
Thanks for having me, Russ. Great to talk to you.